Is it going?
Yeah.
Am I in the box?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Probably would have said no.
What?
I said Libby would have said no. She knew.
So thank you guys for coming this morning. As you know, we are going to talk about how to support oral language in the classroom. And this is really coming out from that discussion that we had a couple weeks ago about oral language supporting strategies and the focus from the school on collaborative conversations and specifically oral language in kindergarten because their writing skills aren't as advanced yet. So I just wanted to start us off with this quote. When I was pulling everything together, this quote really kind of brought to the forefront of my mind the importance of focusing on oral language, especially for young kids, because this is really the time where we can support their language and build that foundation for them to then have the literacy skills and the writing skills that they will need to use for the rest of their lives. So I'll give you guys a moment to read it. So obviously, this quote is kind of targeting limited skills in the realm of students with language impairments, but we can not only think about students with language impairments, everyone in your class has a wide range of language skills, from really high language native English speakers to ELL students, and this is really a good time to build that foundation now so that when your ELLs are growing up, they can use those language skills that they learn early on to advance. As well as your kids with native language abilities, kind of everyone would benefit from this language work. And it really goes into all aspects of their schooling life. So not only is this important for our kids, but it's also important for your grading. So I just took the liberty of pulling out a few gold standards that jumped out of my mind on things that we can grade kids on with regards to their oral language. And I know we had that discussion with Megan about how sometimes these things are more of a qualitative than a quantitative way to grade, but these are all in your standards. And can be graded in a quantitative way. For example, are they responding appropriately to complex statements and questions? Can they answer those questions? Are they answering in a complete sentence? When they answer those questions, do you know what they're saying, or are they speaking too quiet, or do they have those articulation errors? Any of those things can be kind of turned into quantitative data for you to be able to track this progress. In addition, sequencing and narrative structure. If you give them a story, can they tell you the first and the last and the middle things? Anything like that are all really good ways to kind of measure language in a numeric way. Do those all look really familiar to you guys? Yeah, are those the ones you were thinking of as well? Are there any more that I missed?
There's a lot in there, Libby. So there's like
Okay.
kind of phrases, a lot of them have language embedded in
Right.
it, but you have to go through and read each.
Read each little thing, yes,
Yeah.
for sure.
So because I think gold really focuses a lot on development as a whole child, and language being one of those pieces.
I know that the Wonders focus for the school is collaborative conversations. So I also pulled out the conversation-based gold standards. So what they really want your kids to be able to do is 5 or more conversation exchanges about the same topic, and using that acceptable language and social rules, as well as being able to enter a conversation on their own. So can they ask their peers a question that sparks a conversation? Can they join a group of people that's already talking? Those are all things that we can explicitly teach in the classroom and then track their progress throughout the year. It's also in your Colorado State standards. You guys are probably super familiar with these as well. In writing language-based goals for all your kiddos with language impairments, these are something that I work with as well. So it's not only for you guys, it's for everyone.
And you
Yeah.
don't have access to that, but we do, like when we look at our goals, we can click, there is a standard tab.
Oh,
that-
cool.
So you saw just the color bands and
Yeah.
books. We click on that tab, it'll show where these standards fall within the goals, within the goal framework.
That's really awesome
So
and
they're
helpful.
all been linked back, and Gold rewrote some of their standards to align with Colorado, and we adopted it across the state.
That's amazing. I think it's really helpful how the Wonders standards and the Gold standards and the state standards all like go beautifully together. Obviously, that was designed on purpose, but it's nice to see it work in action.
And I don't know if the district has made a crosswalk between all three, but there is a crosswalk that Gold at least did for us. I don't know if that work has happened in the district yet or not.
Looking at some of the collaborative conversations, that's not my paper. Looking at some of the collaborative conversations work that Wonders kind of outlines, there definitely is that interlacing of following rules for discussions and being able to carry on a conversation past one or two exchanges and on the same topic. I think, although maybe they haven't quite perfected the system within the district yet, they're definitely making that work with the Wonders. Okay, so now that we know why we are talking about this, what are language expansion strategies? They are ways that adults can use language to support oral language development in children. You can use them with typically developing children, children with English as a second language, kids with language impairments. They really work for anyone on the spectrum of language abilities. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like you guys don't all know how to talk to children, and you're all very experienced teachers. You probably use most of these strategies anyways. I just think it's really important to name them and become intentional in the way that we use them, because the things that kind of come effortlessly to you through your experience as kindergarten teachers and preschool teachers really do have that positive impact. And so even if you take from this one strategy that you weren't using previously or weren't using as much previously and embed that into your instruction, that you never know, that might be the one difference for that one kiddo whose language skills are struggling. Bless you. So we can use language expansion strategies really anytime we're talking to a child. One-on-one conversations, small groups, large groups, while reading books. If the kid is there, you can be using an oral language expansion strategy. And like I said, you probably often do already. Are you doing okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is just another quote that kind of spoke to me about oral language skills and how they're really helping kids build that foundation for literacy for the rest of their lives. All right, so the first strategy we're going to name is expansion, which is just responding and restating a student's utterance in a grammatically correct way while keeping that student's word order. So for example, if a student says catch fish, you would say, yes, you catch the fish. So you're maintaining that word order, but making it grammatically correct, adding the subject, adding the articles, anything like that. It's probably really familiar to you guys. Expatiation is doing the same while adding more information. So taking that same utterance, catch fish, you can say, yes, you catch the fish from the water, or you catch the blue fish. So not only are you making it grammatically correct, but adding that information and modeling for the student how they can add information to their own utterances. Extension is responding to a student's utterance with a comment that adds more information. So for example, if a student says, I catch the fish, you could say, yes, you catch the blue fish from the water. So you're making a comment that responds to what they're saying, while also adding that more information. Thank you to your fishing activity last Friday for being the inspiration for all of these example sentences. I was trying to think of things that they do in the classroom, and I was like, oh, I watched them catch fish. So.
Since they're doing the observation
They had a lot of fun, so.
And we got them talking.
Yes. Glossing is repeating or writing down the word or words that a student attempted to say. So we often use it with students with articulation errors, just to repeat that word that they're saying. So for example, Marie, you have a student in your class who stops the F sound with the B sound. So if she says fish, you would say, yes, fish. So you're not drawing attention to that articulation error, you're just kind of saying it again. Another example of this is when students bring you written work with just immaturely formed letters or anything like that, and you ask them to tell you the story and then you write that down. That's another example of glossing. So like I said, something you're already doing, we're just naming it and making it intentioned, both in writing and in speaking. Recasting is rewording of an incorrect production to correct for any semantic, grammatical, or articulatory errors. So for example, if a student says, he running the school, you could say, yes, he is running to the school. So adding that auxiliary verb, the prepositions. This is kind of wrapping all of your strategies into one thing. The close technique is just a sentence frame. So you can do it orally or with a visual sentence frame. I see the, and the students can fill in fish. This is a really great way to promote new vocabulary, as well as use it in large group because everyone can respond at once. You don't have to like do it in small group or have it like that. Okay, we're gonna pause here for a little activity. Does anyone have any questions about any of those strategies? No? Do you use them all a lot, all the time?
Some more than others.
Which ones do you use more or less often?
I think it depends on the student. Maybe I'm just thinking about, like, I use glossing, but more like when it comes to written stuff.
Uh-huh.
I guess, expansion sometimes.
I was gonna say expansion.
That's what I
because,
was,
yeah.
I think I probably use extension the least.
Okay. Expansion and extension are both really good ways to add information
Part of
and
it
correct
is,
those.
I think sometimes it's like we don't know what they say at all.
Uh-huh.
So finding like that entry point can be very difficult, especially this time of year since we haven't kind of picked up on them.
Right, barely know the kids.
Barely know the kids. So I do a lot of, yeah,
And I would say extension would be more like end of year. Because right now we're just trying to get the basic, that I catch the fish, just the basic sentence. of
Right.
Forming it properly.
We need like these magic translators and
Right, you do for sure.
We like to hear from you.
It is definitely easier to use these strategies once your kids become more familiar and you get to learn their language patterns and what kind of errors they're making and things like that, as well as any articulatory errors. I would say even if you can pick up on like one word in the sentence. So if you hear mumbo jumbo blah, 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 fish, and even if you just know that one word and you can think of a response to say about a fish, just modeling that correct language around a fish is already helping those kids. So I know I do the same thing. It's really hard to understand what they're saying a lot of the times, and especially you guys have a cohort of very low language kids in kindergarten right now. But even if you can just pick up on one word and choose one of these strategies to just develop that one word a little bit, they're already gaining the benefit from those oral language strategies. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I know that some of them are easier to use also with kids with higher language skills. So that extension is easier when you have a kid that's saying a little bit more, whereas the recasting is easier when you have a kid who has really low language skills and they're just kind of coming at you with 2 or 3 word utterances. But it is important to kind of respond to everything that they're saying, even if you're only catching snippets here and there of what they're saying, to kind of model that grammatically correct and language, as well as model that conversational turn of when someone talks to me, I'm talking back about the same topic, things like that. Do you guys have any others that are kind of jumping out at you as really easy or really hard?
No, other than just to say, it's all day long. I mean, like, I'm thinking of my math lesson, and I'm trying to get them to say today is August 20th, today is Monday, August 20th, or whatever it is. But they just want to say August, and I'm like,
Right.
That's not what I said, repeat what I said. Just getting it to be whole sentences all day long.
It definitely is a struggle to kind of mand that language that you want. We're going to get into visuals a little bit later. But when you do the repetition, is it a whole sentence, or are you going word by word, or phrases, or?
I do phrases.
Okay.
Break it up, yeah. And then we put it all.
And then you put it all back together. That's a really good way. And even if they're struggling on the phrases, taking it a step back and going word by word, and then phrases, and then the whole sentence, might help them get that strategy a little bit more. And then obviously, as they continue in kindergarten, they're going to get it even more. So I have a few. Well, let's do the activity. Okay, so I wrote a bunch of sentences that kids might say on little Post-its or index cards. And I was hoping that you guys would just take a few and think of a strategy in a way that you can kind of use that strategy to respond to this kiddo. There are a few articulation errors, so if you're not getting them, let me know. If you want to, I think I have enough for 2 for everyone. Okay. And then we'll just talk about them. Why did you choose the strategy that you chose?
Thank you.
I really like your shirt today. And you can either write it or we can talk about them. I don't really have a preference.
You said right on this?
Yeah, you can. Or you can talk about them with a buddy. Is everyone ready? Do we need a few more minutes? Everyone good to go? Does anyone want to share what one of their utterances was and what the strategy that they used?
I had green, so I said glossing and just saying green.
Yeah, great. Good job.
So I had him jumping, and I just used extension, and I said, yes, he is jumping.
Very nice.
I think I did recasting, but I wasn't sure. It said, yesterday I go my house. I said, yes, yesterday I went to my house.
Very nice. Yeah, correcting that grammatical utterance.
And I thought it was weird that you say, instead of you when they use I, but just restating it for them. This is I go, but I'm not talking about myself, they're talking about them.
Yes.
Instead of me saying you.
Mm-hmm.
I thought so, I was like, I guess I'm gonna keep it in I.
Yes.
So they hear it.
So they hear it. Sorry, say what you said again.
I said, yes, yesterday I went to my house.
Very nice.
Yeah, and so say, I just thought,
Mhm.
you, yeah, I
Mine
get
was
it.
like that too. and
Yeah,
I was
I
like,
like
Mhm.
do I say you or I?
Yeah.
And you can do either one. In a conversation, it sometimes feels weird to like say exactly what they're saying without changing the pronouns. With that one, I would say because the error is the tense as opposed to the pronoun, changing it to you would also be fine. With the one that said him jumping, we have that pronoun error, so we want to make sure that that's what we're correcting. But because I went, you went, it's the same verb anyway, so it's fine.
I changed mine to a question because you said, I break me arm, and I said, oh, did you break your arm?
That's also a really good way to do it. Either doing that or saying, oh, you broke your arm, so
Yeah.
changing the tense, either one. The question is a really good strategy and also kind of reinforces that staying on topic, conversational exchanges about the same thing. That's how we talk about things. So good job.
So is that another strategy then, question? Because that's what I was looking for too. Like, I didn't know where asking a question would fit in here, because we're asking for more information, we're not getting more information.
Asking for more information is also another great strategy.
Okay.
You can do that. You can give more information. It kind of depends on if you have a kid with higher language skills that's able to answer that question. Great. If you have a kid with lower language skills, they might not
Right.
be able to answer that question or know what that question strategy is. Then you're going to end up having to answer it yourself anyways. We'll talk about that in
Well, we've
actually
got the
just a
longer
minute.
ones, yeah.
Yeah, and I categorize that as recasting.
Mhm. Anyone else?
I have free blue dot and I did extension and glossing with it. You're right, you have free blue dots.
Good. Extension, glossing, and yeah, great job.
Mine was, I want to go outside, and I put it as extension and recasting and said, do you want to go outside?
Awesome.
It worked that way.
Yeah, that would work great. Can you think of a way to do it without turning it into a question?
No, how would I do that?
Just say, oh, you want to go outside,
Just
because
repeat
that's
it.
just repeating it back, changing all those grammatical things to make it a grammatical sentence.
And so then they can say.
Mm-hmm.
Then my long one that I wanted to make a question to was, I sleep at my aunt's house.
Uh-huh.
So it'd be recasting, oh, you slept at your aunt's house.
Yes. And a lot of this does feel like you're asking them a question.
Yeah.
When you say it back to them, you're like, it almost feels like you're asking them to make sure that you understood them correctly. And a lot of times kids will say like, yes, when you do any of these strategies, like especially recasting, expansion, they'll say yes, because that is what they said. Making it a statement or a question is fine. The really important thing is that you're modeling that correct language for them.
And that's a developmental skill, is being able to understand that somebody's asking you a question.
Mm-hmm. Right, and so the way that you would change that is just by changing like your tone of voice and the way that you're asking that. So you can say, what was your sentence? I sleep at my aunt's house. So you can say, oh, you slept at your aunt's house? Kind of inviting them to respond by answering that question. Or you can say, oh, you slept at your aunt's house. That's not a question. They might respond, but they might not. either way, you're modeling that exact same grammatical structure. It's just whether you want them to kind of affirm that you're saying that correctly or not. Does that make sense? Okay. Okay, a few more strategies that are great for the whole group. Binary choice, which is orally providing two choices for the students to select from. So like you said, Marie, talking about those questions. Where was the fish? The fish was in the river, or the fish was in the lake. That gives them an entire utterance that they can model their language after. And like you were talking about with, it's hard for them to repeat the whole utterance. This is a great time for them to, you could kind of go step by step, and then the fish was in the lake. The fish was in the lake. Practicing those longer utterances. So now I wanted to talk a little bit about visuals. I know that the Wonders curriculum has visuals that go along with it. How do you guys feel about them? Do you like them? Are they hard to use?
What part are you referring to? Are you referring to the cards or like the vocabulary?
Vocabulary cards, does it have visual sentence frames in it? Does it do anything like that? Or is it more just pictures going along with new vocabulary words?
I've only really used like every once in a while the sentence frames are there, like for the written use,
Mhm.
that respond to the reading.
Mm-hmm.
And I use the picture vocabulary cards all the time.
Okay. Do you like them? Are they easy to use?
Because they are easier. I use them in the digital format, so they're already stacked and loaded.
Uh-huh.
And then I don't have to go through my book every
Right,
single
and
day
find 'em.
about just those cards. They are organized by week, but since I've been teaching beginners for that time, I went over every vocabulary word, every sight word that was in that week, every day, instead of
Mhm.
just the one or two. I like them.
So because you're teaching beginners, you're kind of approaching that from like a more of just more repetitions.
More repetition. Well, and we start out slow because there's I like that Wonders has that kind of set routine.
Mm-hmm.
So like you say it, you define it, and then you put a sentence to it.
Mm-hmm.
So the nice thing is I start out with my sentence very simple, like on Monday. And we don't have any words in the Smart Start now, but like one of the word was explore. And so I'd say explore, and then repeat back to explore.
Mm-hmm.
Explore means to go look for different things, or they have like a nice little definition, kindergarten. And then I start out with I explore. Then like maybe I will explore in the forest.
Mm-hmm.
Just to give them that sense, just so that each time we come to that sense, they hold on just a little bit more of using that vocabulary.
Mhm.
Hopefully by day 5, it becomes more theirs.
That's also a great job of expatiating your own language.
Yeah.
Do you find that you teach the very lowest level of ELD?
I have been.
Okay.
I have been in years past.
Do you find that they're learning through that strategy?
I think so, it's hard to tell, since I have a variety of other kids, I have them in the other rooms.
Mhm.
So,
You also have probably a lot of the language impaired kiddos
yeah,
in that classroom.
Yeah, because most of them are second language learners,
Mhm.
and they take the screeners, because they don't have, they don't have the articulation or sometimes even the confidence to talk to the screener. They usually come in as beginners.
Mm-hmm.
So, I can't necessarily say, because it's not something I've been necessarily monitoring for, like, are they taking it on, are they using it? But I do hear some of those words
Mhm.
later on in the year, so I know that there are some, but I can't tell you, they.
Right, they're
50%
learning,
of them or
right.
Whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And they like that vocab routine, especially when you give them the question like, where would you explore at the playground or something like that? Like they get excited turning and talking
Mhm.
about the question. So they're like, yeah, I want to think about it.
Great. The others of you that teach the higher levels, do you find that kids are learning them faster? Are they less reliant on the visuals, or is it because it's new vocabulary, they're always relying on the visuals to help them?
Well, I've been doing native and I still feel like they They need the visuals.
They
in
need the visual.
beginning.
Mhm.
I don't know, like to say, if I took it away, would they, you know?
Right.
How would it be?
Mhm.
I would say with a lot of the close activities with my group, we talk about like what would make sense here and that kind of thing, and sometimes some of them are kind of a stretch, you know, like what are they looking for in this activity? We kind of talk about that together, and then how would that look, and what would make sense here and that kind of thing, and what wouldn't make sense, and kind of breaking it apart.
The
Cool.
close activities are pretty difficult, because we've sat around the table.
We don't know what a good
We're like,
answer
okay, what is familiar? I purposely kept my book from last year, you know, where I wrote it, because I'm like going, okay, this was a struggle for us.
Right.
And I've been on a Wonders Teachers blog this summer,
Uh-huh.
and that seems to be the
Same feedback,
consensus
yeah.
nationally.
That the
Like-
Wonders closes
like
are too
people
hard.
like-
There's no answer key, there's no suggested answer key.
No.
Yeah.
And
Huh.
it's completely open kind of thing. And this is like teachers nationally, so I'm sure in schools that are high language. And so it's one of those things that we've kind of said that we would use and find.
I wonder if it
Yeah,
would
I
be
wish I could
helpful.
think of an example, I'm sorry.
No, I just.
That's
mean, like,
okay.
if during our team planning, when we just quickly.
Yeah, if
look
we
at
all
the
fill out our,
page.
we all fill out our
What
book.
would be a good example?
Yeah.
I don't know. It would
I
help me.
purposely, Tanya, I did keep mine. I stuck mine in my Wonder stuff.
Well, I don't
because, that
even
was a
think
good
I
idea.
liked my answers last year.
Well,
for
you can
some
change
of
them.
There's no changing them.
I could use some help.
So, but that, yeah, and that's
From
one
my
of those
kindergarten
things.
studies.
Those are difficult. We
Uh-huh.
And so, the vocabulary routine that Wonders has laid out is really nice. It is.
Yeah.
It gives them a lot of exposure to new vocabulary.
Mhm.
And sometimes the vocabulary is not as blatant. Like sometimes you wonder why they pick it. It is definitely higher level vocabulary, but it's not maybe key vocabulary to the standard reading, but it's just that vocabulary expansion.
Okay.
You know? So it's like I don't know if I picked other ones to go with the oral language stories or the books, but it's that. Then you look back and it's like, well, it's that higher level
Mhm.
that they could use to talk about the story.
Very
I
nice.
teach the highest BLLs.
Uh-huh.
So lots of times they'll ask questions about words that are not the vocabulary words. So a lot of our discussion is based on their questioning. Words they don't know, it's like you're saying,
Yeah.
what the kids ask about is not what Wonders thinks they're gonna ask about.
Mhm. Which is a great, in my opinion, a great way to teach vocabulary, is to talk about
Yeah.
the networks and everything. We're going to talk more about vocabulary next week, but I just kind of wanted to get an idea of what your visuals looked like, and that's it. All right, we already did our activity, so now I know you guys have all been reading books to kindergartners for forever, so I kind of wanted to get an idea of what your pattern or routine around reading goes, and then see if there are any areas where we can add in a few more oral language expansion techniques to continue to grow their language in every single scenario. So what do you guys do before you read a book?
A lot of times I'll take a picture walk
Uh-huh.
and just have the kids look at the pictures and we kind of discuss about what we think might, picture walk and a prediction.
Mm-hmm.
Looking at the pictures and what do we think's going to happen and what is this and what's
Great.
happening on this page, just
Mm-hmm.
to get them to use the pictures.
Right. Good strategy. When you do that, are you asking them open-ended questions or kind of making prediction statements on your own? Or is it a combination of both?
Probably a combination, but a lot of
Perfect.
open-ended, just like, what do you think's happening here?
Right.
And if it's fiction, like, you know, thinking about character setting, problem and solution, that kind of thing, like, or if it's nonfiction, like, what kind of facts do you think we might be learning about in this book?
Great
I
strategy.
really don't really know facts, but.
But they can make a guess.
Right,
Yeah.
we talk about it.
Look at the title, and the front cover or the back cover, and usually the title page
Mm-hmm.
to kind of like before you even take that picture. Well, what do you think?
Mm-hmm.
Either what are you going to learn? What do you think you're going to learn about in the story? If it's a nonfiction,
Mm-hmm.
what do you think?
this book is hard.
Great.
And then I try and make it 2 steps. First, what do you see?
Mm-hmm.
And then, like, everybody can access boy, dog, pig. And so then, once we talk about everything you see, then we make the predictions. So I really think it helps a lot of the language students to just notice.
Answer that concrete question before they're making the guess. That's a great strategy too. Yeah, you guys are crushing it. Pointing out the title, using pictures to make predictions, introducing the setting and the characters. I would also, none of you mentioned it, but you probably do, introduce new vocabulary in the story. So if your fiction story is about an animal that they've never heard of, like a vole, you know, tell them what a vole is. Find a picture of a vole. Maybe find a couple pictures of a vole on the internet so they're not just imagining this animated one, anything like that. And then if our book does have that new vocabulary in it, drawing their attention to the fact that they're going to be hearing that word a lot throughout the story, maybe giving them, you know, raise your hand when you hear a vole or when you see the vole, anything like that to engage their commitment to the story. Are there any strategies you use differently while you're reading?
I'll stop and discuss if I need to, like if we come to like a vocabulary word that I didn't cover. Kind of also stop to rethink like what happened, like you know, especially if we're getting to that, you know, it's that problem, like wow, what just happened in the story? So those kind of questions, just so that I make sure that they're comprehending as I go.
Very nice.
Like connecting it to something you already did or something familiar to us.
Great strategy. Yeah, like you said, continuing to point out pictures, stopping and asking those questions or making the statements as you're reading. Continuing to make predictions, so not only at the beginning of the story, but once you get to the problem, how do you guys think they're going to solve it? They might be right, they might be wrong, they might remember from the picture walk, but those are all opportunities to build in oral language, talking about that story as you're continuing. Continuing to point out the pictures. What's this vole doing here? I don't know what story we're reading about a vole, but adding your own information or paraphrasing. And especially sections with higher language or a lot of vocabulary words that you think your kids might not know. Read that section and then go through and say it again in your own words that you're making sure they understand everything. And then, like Jackie said, encouraging students to make connections to their own life, both in the classroom and out of the classroom. Sharing your own reaction using phrases like, I like this part, I got scared when, and having the kids do that as well. Using closed phrases to promote vocabulary or with repetitive phrases. So if every time our vole does something, we can say, and then and they can yell vole, anything like that to promote them using those words and hearing them in the story. And then, like Tanya said at the beginning, talking about the setting, characters, problems, and solutions continuously throughout. What is your routine around the end of the book? Yes, time dependent.
Because, you know, to start, yeah.
Right.
This is, for me, some of this is multiple days. This is not just in one day. Like, you do the picture walk and prediction one day, and the first week, the second day. And, you know, and then read it again, and go to kind of the afternoon. But I'm thinking doing a retell, kind of, and that's, I think that lines nicely up to that whole idea of telling a story over time, and that sequencing of stories, or a retell.
Yeah, that's a great strategy. Retells are awesome. I love them.
And it can be a personal reactions, like what was the most interesting, or how would you feel if that was you, or what was
Yeah.
your favorite part? Connections, yeah. To make it their own, like a no wrong answer.
Right.
And a restating
That errorless learning.
of like who was there, you know, what happened, like you know, do the whole retell like bit by bit, but then also about reinstating of those key story elements.
Amazing. So you guys already do a lot of these things, discuss and recall specific events and characters, how the story relates to student experiences, reviewing that new vocabulary again, what words did we learn in that story, when did we use them, and then student reactions. I liked this part, I didn't like this part. Drawing those connections back to their home is really helpful. Sounds like you guys already do shared book reading and you didn't even know it. What?
I said, I think you do it all the time.
Yeah. A lot of these things, like I said, are things that you're already doing. But it's really helpful to name them and kind of become a little bit more intentional. Be more conscious of it, so that you can be even greater. Yeah.
I just don't want strategy.
Right.
So if I start being more conscious, then I make sure I hit them all.
Hit them all, cycle through those strategies. Some kids respond better to some strategies than others, and you kind of don't know which one's going to make a kid flourish until you're using all of them. Okay. How are we doing on time? We're doing okay. All right. I have, as we transition into collaborative conversations and topic maintenance and everything, I have a quick reading for you all. If you start at the part down here that says the role of oral language in classroom discourse and end where it says right before metalinguistic skills. Sorry. We're almost done, I promise. Apologies if it didn't copy correctly.